make sure you're spending enough to hit your goals. And I think some of it stems from us as real estate investors. Like, we're just so cheap. We start off cheap. We try to do everything cheap. I'm going to try to find investor friendly contractors. I'm going to go spend hours of my time trying to find out how to save 5 cents on tile. It's almost like an airline. Like, once the flight's gone, if there's a bunch of open seats, you've lost that time, you've lost that revenue. Think of our business like that. If you go months and months without advertising enough to get the deal done or focus, like, you can't go back in time and rectify that. You're losing daylight here, right?
What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Carrotcast podcast, the podcast with a funny name but a big mission. We help thousands of real estate investors and agents grow rock-solid mindsets, do better marketing so that you can build a business of freedom and impact. I'm your host, Trevor Mock. Let's dive into today's episode. All right, guys and gals, we're coming at you with a brand new episode of the Carrotcast. And I've got a returning guest, maybe a 3 or 4 time returner guest on here. But I always like to get Mike's perspective. I'm going to reintroduce you guys to Mr. Mike Hambright, or introduce you guys and gals to him. But the thing that I really wanted to bring Mike on here for is Mike comes to the mastermind that I put on each year, and we have a chance to talk really deeply about business, about life, about data. And one of the things that they're the best at in the industry on is they do tons and tons and tons of offline marketing for some of the biggest investors in the space. Now, if you're a real estate agent listening to this and you're going, how the heck is this podcast going to relate to me? Well, it's going to relate to you in an amazing way, because if you're looking for sellers right now, guys and gals, if you're an agent and you're going, I need to find sellers, and it's hard in this market that we're in. I read a stat the other day that there's more real estate agents with licenses than there are houses for sale. And so if you're going, how do I find those houses before they reach out to my competitors? Well, we're going to show you some of the things that are working out there in the market to find motivated sellers who are looking to sell their houses, and either buy them as an investor or hybrid, or partner with those darn investors to then take those listings or do the marketing the way that we're going to be teaching you here today, guys. So we'll touch on a whole bunch of other things, but I want to introduce Mike Hambright, CEO of Investor Machine, CEO of Investor Fuel, Flip Nerd. There's probably 10 other ones in there, but
I created a new one yesterday afternoon. You don't even know about it
yet. I think you've got the attorney on speed dial for like the LLC creation guy. It's like a new LLC every other month. But welcome on, man.
Hey, glad to be back. Always good to see you, my friend.
Dude, for sure. So we're going to see each other in person in Florida here in a couple months, which I'm pumped about. But I think the last time that you came on here, we gave a brief overview of kind of what is it that people need to be looking at right now in the real estate space? What do they need to be aware of? We'll touch on that a bit. But dude, why don't you kind of catch up the audience? First of all, introduce yourself so everyone knows who you are, what you do if they don't know you yet. And then we're going to dive into some really cool topics.
Yeah. So Mike Hambright, people, you probably get this too, Trevor. If you meet somebody like, what do you do? And they're like, that used to be really simple. I just said I'm a real estate investor, and that's evolved over time. So I am a real estate investor. I've flipped hundreds of houses here in the Dallas market. I've done a tremendous amount of coaching over the years through a bunch of different brands, including flipnerd.com, which is probably how Trevor and I met initially, was through Flip Nerd one way or another. And that's evolved into just other things. I run a mastermind now called Investor Fuel, one of the top masterminds in the country for professional investors. And then I run Investor Machine, or the Investor Machine, which is kind of a data-driven lead generation, kind of a white glove, done-for-you solution for real estate investors. I guess I've never mentioned this live before, but it is just a matter of time before we're working with in the retail space with agents and brokers. And so that definitely is on the roadmap. But right now it's primarily with real estate investors, and we work in about 350 markets across the country right now for a lot of the top real estate investors. So kind of went from, I refer to myself as a corporate refugee. So I left corporate America, and although I'm completely unemployable and never going back, I used to, when I first got into real estate, talk about and think about how I'm never going back, and I had all these bad experiences. But the reality is there's a lot of things that I learned in the corporate world that I can now apply to my businesses now, especially more of like the service type businesses where we have lots of customers and repeat customers and things like that, in terms of the importance of kind of being on the cutting edge a little bit. And so that's kind of armed me in one way or another. It's like you have these lessons that you don't think were really lessons, but eventually you're like, oh, okay, that's going to help me now. But yeah, we at the end of the day, like Trevor, you and I started so long ago that You could just send direct mail to almost anybody. You could run any sort of ad online and it would work. It was cost effective enough
Mhm.
to work to some degree. And we're not in that world anymore. We're in a
Yep.
world now where you have to be more precise. And the industry, in terms of lead gen, is not nearly as much of the Wild West, I guess, as it used to be. So
Yep.
now, if you can get hyper targeted by using data and information online, you have a clear leg up against your competition instead of just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall like we used to.
Dude, so I want to dig into that. I've got a few things I want to dig into in this, 30 to 40 minutes or so. Let's dive into, you mentioned data, especially on direct mail and offline. I like to dig deep into that and figure out what is working right now. Where should people be targeting? What types of direct mail strategies are working well. Number two, I think especially in the time that we're in now, I mean, you kind of always say that, right? It's like, oh, the time we're in now, the things are always changing. They're always changing. I think,
Yeah.
I think the reason that things are because things are always changing, we always need to be plugged into a group, and that's something we've talked about on here before. I'm a part of 2 or 3 masterminds, and I want to talk about a little bit on the mastermind side and kind of what you guys are seeing collectively on the Investor Fuel group on like what is working right now, what are the challenges people are facing, how you guys wading through those. And there'd probably be some other topics that'll pop up too. But let's start with the lead gen side of it. So you guys run traffic, like you mentioned, in a lot of different markets, offline, direct mail. Do you guys do
Right.
anything else on the offline side of things, or is it focused on direct mail?
Skip tracing as well, but we don't.
Okay.
We have a Investor Machine is a system, so people have to join and they kind of get a license in a market.
Yep.
And so we don't just provide skip tracing to anybody that comes to our website. You actually have to join as a member,
Mhm.
and then we kind of act as like almost like a strategic marketing manager. But for the most part, most of what we do is mail. And if folks want those same lists that they're marketing to with mail skip
Mhm.
trace, then we do that as well.
So I'm going to throw a scenario at you. So we're doing this right now on the online side of things. I called it 60 days to a deal because there'd be people like, oh, I can't make PPC work. And so we picked a random market. We went into that market that we hadn't been in, doing it remotely, not being there on the ground. And we literally showed people, we started the campaign in front of them. We created it in front of them on video. We launched the campaign, and every other week we're showing the stats. Here's how much money we spent. Here's the leads that have came in. Here's the problems we're having. Here's the wins, the losses, and with the aim to get that first PPC deal done within 60 days, and then you can scale it up from there. Usually, we're able to get it done far quicker than that. In Louisville, when we went into that market, we got our first deal out, $54,000 profit in about 3 weeks, like cash in bank 3 weeks, which is not normal, right? That's not normal, but it worked in that market. This one, we're at the 60 days in Orlando. And I literally just got a text message today from Bo Hollis. And he's like, I got this under contract. And it's like right at our mathematical max where you go through and create I've taught it a million times to our Carrot community. You go through and create your budget the correct way, remove emotion and trust math. Is right at the mathematical max of our spend and the lead numbers. We locked one under contract. This should be a good profit. So if you guys I'm going to throw the same scenario at you. If you guys were to go into a new market for a client, with a client, for yourselves, what would you do? What's the first step that you would do if you're going to be doing a direct mail campaign in that market? Is it the list? And then let's break down that step, and then let's break down the basic steps that you would go to have success in a new market.
Yeah, so we're all about the list. And the interesting thing is, although we provide this as a service,
Mhm.
we tell people exactly what we do. There is no black box as to like how these guys work.
Yep.
Not to tell some of our competitors are good friends of mine. Not to say anything bad about them, but some of them have a black box that
Mhm.
you could never go do what they do
Yep.
because it's complicated, right?
Mhm.
For us, we just lay it out there. It's just really hard work, and nobody actually wants to do that much work. But think about this: like what we all wish we had is a list of who is under a lot of distress right now and is ready to sell at a deep discount, and they're going to sign a contract tomorrow.
Mhm.
Like that's the list everybody wants, right? But that list doesn't exist. So
Yep.
you have to try to find indicators that would help you get closer to that list. And so what we do is we essentially have our members, they complete effectively a buy box. So let's make sure we're advertising at the types of properties you even want to buy.
Mhm.
Like the good thing about mail is you can hyper target on zip codes, and geographically you can get really focused, like price points of houses and stuff like that, things that you
Yep.
can't do in all different medium types of advertising. So we use that as an overlay. But on top of that, then we go dig into the county and we go after about 40 different lists. Now I tell
Mm.
people we don't get all 40 anywhere, but that's our hit list, right? And obviously it's things like probates and notice of default and on to mowing liens. And we literally even scour the newspapers and look for obituaries.
Hmm.
We look at arrest records and we look at divorces and all sorts of stuff, right? And where we're a little bit different, there's a couple of other list stacking softwares out there, but you still have to go get the list.
Mm.
And what's a little bit unique for us is we timestamp the data points because those data points aren't good forever, right? They have a shelf life, if you will. And then we weight the data points. So a probate is worth more than a mowing lien, let's say.
Mm.
So we kind of stack all this data in the software that we built that basically pumps out based on your buy box, based on your market, based on your budget, and based on all these different data points that we could find. Here is the best list to mail to, like right now.
Hmm.
If you had $3,000, here's the best list. If you have $40,000 in your budget a month, here's the best list to go to. And then we execute it for them. We completely do all the mail, all the weekly drops, pay all the vendors, like everything like that. And so I would say like what makes us unique and what can people go replicate if they want to do it themselves is go get those lists. They're really hard to get, but go get them on a consistent basis. We refresh our lists like daily and weekly. We have about 100 data miners right now that manually go in and
Mm.
find all this stuff, which is a lot of work, right? Nobody
Yeah,
wants
it
to,
is.
nobody want to do that much work. But a lot of real estate investors historically have said, people are asking me to take them off the list, but it's too much work. So I'm just going to keep mailing them. Or they get a big stack of mail back that says like, these were undeliverable. And when it's time to go do your next order, they haven't had time to scrub their list
Mm.
and they're either don't do it consistently. It's like the first of the month, time to get your order in. And 3 weeks later, you're like, oh crap, we forgot to order the mail this month. And, and then inevitably they're like, just send it to the same list again. And it hasn't
Yeah.
even scrubbed, right? And so we're at a point now where our customers don't even get the mail back.
Mm.
The post office notifies us of something that couldn't be delivered. We put it into our software immediately and they
Gotcha.
remove like real time, right? And so what I think for a lot of real estate investors that are doing really well, they do several things a little bit better,
Mhm.
right? They're not like revolutionary. It's just with more precision, a little bit better, and more consistently like clockwork. And that makes a big difference for
Mm.
folks in our industry.
Dude, so that right there, I want to spend a little bit more time on that because I think that one mindset shift for anybody listening to this is really important. And I'm going to kind of go back to that 60 day to a deal example once again. Is we usually pull a deal out far quicker than this, but this one was harder, and most people would have given up because they
Yeah.
didn't trust the math, or they weren't doing those small tweaks in the site, the small tweaks in the campaign to get your click costs down and adding in your negative keywords. It's like the return mail is kind of like, hey, this didn't work, don't send it here. That's your negative keywords in PPC. And you've always
Right.
got to refresh it. You've always got to update it to hone that campaign, so you're not spending money on things that are going to go to waste. And that stuff that Mike's talking about, guys, if you're going to go out there and do any type of marketing like that, you need to always have some level of refining and adjustment that's a consistent part of that campaign. Whatever it is, cold calling, test starting the calls one way for a week or two and then testing it with another way. You've always got to keep honing it because the biggest competitors in that market are. So lock in that mindset, y'all. Mike, one thing you had mentioned, and I'm gonna dive into this a little bit more because this is what popped up in my brain, and people might be curious. So you have the 40 types of lists that you're pulling. And you mentioned probate, in there, and you mentioned like the mowing liens one or whatever it was,
Right.
mowing violations. Do you have like, what would your top 3 be, your top 5 be, where you're going into a market and you're like, man, we really need to get these 5. Like these 5 are usually pretty darn good ones, or 3 or whatever your number is.
Yeah, and I think it changes over time. Like for
Mhm.
example, notice of default or eviction notices and things have been weird during COVID, right?
Mm.
Like it used to be pretty cut and dry as to what happens when you don't pay the rent or pay your
Yep.
mortgage. Now it's it's not very clear as to what. Apparently, you can just live for free these days. Like who knows. And that depends on what state you're in too. But
Yep.
I always think like our heaviest weighted ones are things like notice of default,
Mhm.
probate, and I'm not trying to think of what the third one would be. Gonna put me on the spot here. I don't know what our highest weight was, but like the more severe, like a mowing
Yeah.
lien, big deal. And we
Yeah.
even look at stuff, another problem is that sometimes people pull like tax delinquent.
Mm,
So that's a strong one. But let me give you a little insight to this. So there's a major county, I won't even say which county, that we looked at that had like it literally had like 40,000 tax delinquent properties.
mm.
But when we started to dig into it, 10 of the 40,000 were within 5 cents late. It was a rounding error. A bunch of them were a penny. It
Really?
was a rounding error. And so there's a big difference. So if you just pull the list and you upload it and all that stuff, well, there's a big difference between a penny delinquent and like
Mm.
$60,000 delinquent,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
then we start to weight like how severe of
Mm.
of an issue is that, right? Because when you start to some of this data is just like if you go buy lists from people and they're like, oh, here they've got tax delinquent, they're on the tax delinquent list. Most of that stuff you're buying is a few pennies. It's really not
Mm.
even severe. Nobody's going to
Yep.
lose their house for a couple pennies, right? So I think like if we all know the weight of the list is like probates, notice
Yep.
of default, tax delinquent, those are big ones. But sometimes you have to look at the severity. I mean, obviously, probate, somebody did die, they
Yeah.
didn't like get sick, um, but the real thing is where we're a little bit unique is that it's the combination of all that data together.
Mhm.
It's not
Yep.
any one thing. It's like the combination of those things. So if you saw that just from let's say from a health perspective, somebody
Yep.
is like overweight, they've got diabetes, they've got these things, like any one of those things would be fine. But when you
Yep.
start to stack up all those issues, it turns into something that is significant. That's going to cause an issue for you at some point, right?
Gotcha, dude. And that's the key right there. So if any of you guys and gals listening to this are unfamiliar with that phrase of list stacking, that's a really important one. If you're doing anything related to outbound marketing, cold calling, direct mail, there's probably other ones as well. And if you kind of look at like driving for dollars, so we're good friends with David Letko, Deal Machine, and driving for dollars is kind of like the extremely, extremely manual way to get some of those types of properties based on a visual, right? So if there's a mowing violation, that's probably one that a driving for dollars person, if they happen to drive by it, would probably snap on there, but they wouldn't capture any of the ones that are related to the seller's distress or any of that kind of
Right.
stuff. And so that's where the value here comes in big time. What are you guys seeing as we're pulling data on this stuff right now? And I've had a lot of data on this in the past. We have the data on our side really deeply, and we're working with InvestorFuse to further pull and kind of pool some of our data together to figure out all the
Mhm.
way from lead to close, a
Yep.
big old wide swath of what's working right now. So be on the lookout for some reports this year on that. But what are you guys seeing right now in like lead to close ratio type of stuff? I know it's going to range by a lot, right? The investor in their
Sure.
business and whatever. But what are you guys seeing on average right now from a good quality lead that turns into a deal?
Like conversion rate or time, you're saying?
Yeah, like how many leads would it take to turn into a deal?
That's a good question. I don't actually know the answer to that inside of our platform because
Yep.
none of the data run like like calls don't run through us and closings
Yep.
don't run through us. Now there's some stuff we're actually rolling out here that's like some AI stuff. I think you and I talked
Cool.
about it a little bit.
Yeah.
We started it this past summer. It's been a beast to like actually get in play. So once we have this AI and our AI is listening to our members' calls, we can start to do some machine learning with the data, but
Mm.
it'll also provide some of the stuff around conversions and lead costs and stuff like that.
Yep.
They're a little more kind of rudimentary KPIs, if you will. But I
Cool.
think at the end of the day, one of what we do for our customers should be a higher conversion rate than somebody just mailing an age and equity list, right?
Yep.
The more broad you mail or the more broad you market online, and Facebook advertising is a good example of that, right? If
Mhm.
you do Facebook ads, the cost per lead is really cheap, but the cost conversion might not be cheaper than
Yep.
anything else because it's not very well targeted typically, right?
Mhm.
That's not my area of expertise, but I know enough to know that, right?
Yep.
Same thing with mail. The more you kind of laser target, what you might see is a higher cost per lead
Mhm.
because it's targeted, but the conversion rate should be higher because you're talking to the type of customer you want to talk to anyway, instead of
Yep.
somebody that's just fishing, right?
I like it.
So yeah,
Cool. Dude, a couple more questions on the direct mail side of things. So, um, we had Behind the Deal. It's our every other Thursday series here at Carrot. Just wrapped it up with Bo Hollis, and we're diving into a deal, and the deal came through SEO on that one, and then they called the phone number, and he happened to pick up that phone call at 10 p.m. Um, which most people would probably let that call go. And he closed the deal. It was a really good profit deal, very motivated client. On the direct mail side, what do you guide your clients to do as far as collecting the incoming calls? Do you guys send to websites at all? Do you guys send a purely phone? And then are they answering them live, or are you guys seeing that matters for answering live on those types of leads or not?
Oh, I think answering live is always the best thing for sure. Yeah.
Hmm.
So we tell everybody that you should answer your phone live, but I
Yep.
know even, back when I was we used to flip, 60, 70 houses a year.
Hmm.
Even when I was doing that, like it gets to a point, like I'd say for 3 years, like we call it the money phone, right? It's like a specific cell phone that is only for leads. Like if that phone rings, it's a lead. It's not like my grandma checking in or whatever, right? So that phone, we would during the day we would hand it to our admin. When she left for the day, I'm like, give it back to me. I'm
Mm.
gonna hold it. And it was that way for 3 years. Now, unfortunately, you know how it works. The phone rings at the most inconvenient time. It's like,
Yep.
Saturday hasn't rung all day. We just sat down for dinner and it rings, or I just went into the bathroom and now it's ringing, right? So
Yep.
that's kind of how it works. But I think after a few years that I just kind of realized in my business that look, we need to use a call center.
Yep.
I know it's not going to be as good as me, but I need my life back. Like I can't be
Hmm.
on call 24 hours a day. I was like
Yep.
aging in dog years, because you're just like constantly working and on call.
Yep.
So I do think it's best to answer the call live. I know it's real easy to outsource stuff to VAs. I mean, heck, we have almost 100
Hmm.
VAs that do different things. So I appreciate us all wanting to outsource everything, but
Yep.
the last thing you should probably outsource is your is taking your phone calls. But at the end of the day, one of the things that I learned is like I shouldn't get my call center if I'm using a call center, even if it's just evenings and weekends as like a backup,
Mm.
to try to go through the same script that I would, because they're just never going to be able to have that conversation because most of the
Mm.
call centers work for all sorts of industries and they're just never going to be proficient at talking to a distressed seller like we are.
Yeah.
And so just simplify the script and say that gather some information and just say, the woman responsible for this or the person responsible for this has actually stepped away. Can I have them call you back in a little bit?
Mm.
And then
Mm.
you get notified from the call center. You probably already notified at that point that a call came through,
Yep.
and just call them back right away. And what I like to say is like, fix the mistakes that they probably just made,
Yeah.
but don't try to get them to have a conversation as if they know what they're talking about, because call centers are revolving doors for people. They're just never going to be as good as you on the phone.
Yep. No, that makes sense. Dude, two more questions on the direct mail side that popped up. The first one is, has anything changed with like your frequency of mailing? How many times are you guys mailing? How often on an
Yeah.
average campaign? I know it will differ, right?
Yep.
But what would you
Yep.
suggest people do?
So I'll just tell you what we do. And what we do is like I said, we score all of our leads. So
Mhm.
every lead in our system in the markets where we operate has a score.
Mm.
And it's not quite as clean as 80/20, but we basically have roughly the top 20% of our lists are the best scored. We, like clockwork, mail those every 30 days. And
Okay.
for kind of the B list, we hit them every 60 days. And so we cycle every 30 days on and off for I guess, the lower score part of our list,
Mm.
right? So when they're hot, we say hit them from land, sea, and air.
Mm.
I know there's, a lot of folks are still texting and cold calling or things like that as well. Some markets, you probably should be careful with that everywhere right now,
Yeah.
but it's still happening. And, whatever you need to do, you want to stay in front of those people more frequently
Hmm.
than necessarily the rest of the list. I always kind of say this with direct mail, like you've seen this, I'm sure. You probably get a solicitation in your mail at least weekly, if not multiple times a week, for tires and mattresses. Like, how often do you buy tires and mattresses? Like, so rarely,
Yeah.
but they just hammer you, right? And the reason is they're high margin products and
Mm.
they want to be in front of you because when you need it, you're just going to decide one day. I
Yep.
woke up with a bad back and you're like, you know what? I'm replacing this mattress this weekend. And so basically, you need to stay in front of people that are most motivated
Mm.
because they're closer to making a decision. So, like, turn up the heat, if you will.
Yep, I like it. So here's the last question on direct mail. On the online side of things, to kind of remove emotion and go with math. And that's the big thing, guys. I'm going to keep driving this because especially in a competitive market, this is what we have to
Yeah.
focus on. SEO, it's about 1 in 10, 1 in 15 leads to a deal. We have a lot of clients closing a lot more than that, but I like to say that is the range. PPC, somewhere between 1 in 10 to 1 in 20 leads in a deal on the Google PPC side. And then so that's about how much. Then you would walk it backwards from what's my average profit per deal in this market with those types of leads and what margin do you want, whatever. So on the direct mail side of things, approximately how many pieces are you guys sending to expect that there should be a deal somewhere in there if you've sent X amount of pieces or X amount of contacts? What do you guys expect usually?
Number of pieces is a little tough, and that's going to vary like from the
Yep.
Bay Area to like Omaha, Nebraska, right? That's going to
Mhm.
differ a lot. But I know you're getting towards like costs, like how much are you willing to spend to make a certain dollar, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that where you're going? Can we jump over the the number of
Yeah, yeah,
pieces?
yeah.
I mean, because I think at the end of the day, those are. I'm not trying to dodge your
No, it's
question,
good.
but I kind of know where you're going. You're my friend. We've had conversations like this before.
Yeah.
Look, this happens all the time. We had a member. I won't say who they are, or what market they're in, but they're in a hyper competitive market, and they were advertising. We just found out they're advertising enough
Mm.
to buy a house every 3 months. Like,
Yep.
let's just say they're in a hyper competitive market. We say, hey, the cost is probably 7 to 9 thousand
Mhm.
per deal. By the way,
Yep.
you make 60 grand on your average deal. Why are you
Yep.
spending three? Right. And then you find they're like,
Exactly.
well, it's just not working. It's like, you're not advertising enough for it to work. Like,
Yep.
that's the problem. Right. And so if I told you that you could put in nine and make like 40 or 50 and with using your numbers, would you be happy with that? It's like, yeah, well, how come you're not
Yep.
advertising at least nine?
Dude. Yep.
And I find it all the time. Real estate investors are, we have customers that aren't advertising enough to get even a deal a month.
Mhm.
And then we have customers that tell us they're getting a 8 or even 12x return on their investment. And we're
Yep.
like, is your goal to buy more houses? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, why aren't you advertising
Yeah,
more?
spend more,
Like,
spend
good
more.
idea. It's almost like a bunch of smart guys, but they just like need to be like, hey, let me sit you down for a second. Let's have a quick chat here. I'm
Yep.
trying to understand. And immediately like this light bulb goes off, but we're all just so busy that
Mhm.
sometimes we don't think in things that are like super obvious, right? But I
And
do think if that was your question,
mhm.
ultimately was like, make sure you're spending enough to hit your goals. And I think some of it stems from us as real estate investors. Like, we're just so cheap. We start off
Mhm.
cheap. We try to do everything cheap. I'm going to try to find investor friendly contractors. I'm going to go spend hours of my time trying to find out how to save 5 cents on tile or
Yep.
whatever. And it's just like, come on, your time is valuable. And it's almost like an airline. Like, once the flight's gone, if there's a bunch of
Mhm.
open seats, you've lost that time, you've lost that
Yep.
revenue. Think of our business like that. If you go months and months without kind of advertising enough to get the deal done or
Mhm.
focus, like, you can't go back in time and rectify that.
No.
You're losing daylight here, right?
And guys, this is the thing about direct mail or any of the offline marketing methods. I've said this so many times. You guys are going to get your volume from from the outbound, right? Your volume comes from the outbound. So if you're wanting to be a 3, 4, or 5, 8 million, or whatever, $1 million business, it's probably not going to happen just with PPC and SEO unless you're going nationally and doing in so many markets. But if you're in a Dallas or if you're in Oklahoma City or Orlando or Miami or any of those, and you want to get to a 7-figure business, not that you cannot do it with SEO and PPC, you can because you have really high margins on those, but your volume is really going to come from your outbound. And then from the inbound, that's where we find our highest margins, the highest converting leads and deals, to kind of act as that really high profit, consistent base. And then we scale the business with the outbound. And also when you nail the process, like Mike is talking, that's where then you get consistency with this too, because now you're marketing at such consistent intervals. And what Mike was mentioning, guys, if your average profit per deal is, let's say, $40,000, and you would be willing to trade 25% of that, or let's say 25% for round math, right? I'd be willing to trade $10,000 in order to get 40. Okay, $10,000 in your direct mail expenses and maybe with your acquisitions person too, right? So 10K, I would do that all day long. But if, like Mike is saying, if you're only putting 3,000 in a month in that, then the math says it's going to take you 3.5 months to get one of those deals potentially. So if you want to get 4 months, four deals a month, and if there's enough data and enough houses in that market to yield that, then you better be ready to start to work your way up towards a 20, 30, $40,000 a month spend if you want to get the 4 to 5 deals a month from that. Now, your numbers can actually, maybe you convert way better, or maybe the list is even better than you thought it was, and those numbers get better. But just be ready for that math equation. If your market is a $9,000 per deal market or a $4,000 per deal market, and you're spending 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 a month, and you're whining about not getting consistent deals every month, If it's the right list, the right mailing piece, which Investor Machine can take care of all that for you. If it's the right process of following up with leads, trust the darn math and just step into it and make the right investments. And then you guys will get the deals done. Okay, guys. So I would highly suggest, if you guys have started to nail the online side, start to add on direct mail and connect with Investor Machine to do so. They're amazing company for the higher level investors, the ones who are willing to spend. What is your guys' minimum spend? 5, 10
We do
grand?
have a minimum per county of 3,000 per month in ad spend, which so it's fairly low. I mean, honestly, $3,000 doesn't get you much anymore. We just talked about. We do have a minimum. We really don't work with newbies. We work with people that are doing at least a deal a month, but we have some much bigger clients as well. But can I if I could bolt on one more thing to what you just said about make sure you're advertising enough to get a deal, right? But I can tell you this business, as most real estate investors get into this for freedom of some sort, financial freedom and time freedom. The only way to get there is generally to do, and everybody has their own goals. I've never been one. I mean, we have people in Investor Fuel and Investor Machine that do hundreds of deals a year, right? And not everybody wants that lifestyle. That's a hard life, right? But I can tell you what else is hard is doing 1 or 2 deals here and there. And you can never afford to have an admin or an acquisitions person, or even you have to back out of advertising every once in a while because the money's not there. You've got to, like, the first couple deals you do a month in most markets, hopefully will cover your overhead. And then your profit as a business owner comes from like deals 3, 4 and on, right? Depends on you. Everybody's overhead's a little bit different, but said another way, like if you have an office cost and you have an admin and you have some base level of marketing, that's almost a fixed cost. And you always have to offset that. So if you're doing a deal or 2 here and there, you have a job, you don't have a business. And I know Trevor feels the same way as me. We want people to have a business that gives you your life back, but you got to overcome that fixed kind of expense hurdle in your business.
Dude, Hunter, this is actually an amazing transition. So I was on a call a week or 2 ago with Xander from CR Maryland. Craig
he's one of our customers.
Yeah, he's Investor Fuel client. Are they Investor Machine?
Investor Machine too. Yep. He said, awesome. By the way, it's they do 225 like major rehabs, like $100,000 rehabs a year, and Investor Machine is their best lead source according to them.
Dude, it's so cool because they're a big business now, right? And the thing when we talk about freedom, so I was on the call with Xander, who I don't know what his actual role is, but he seems like he's kind of running a bunch of the ship over there, if not the whole thing. And they're in Maryland. I don't know if they're in other markets now, but that's where we're helping them, is in the Baltimore market. And we were going through some of their numbers for 2021 from SEO. Their SEO was crushing it. $23,000 investment, $700,000 in gross profits from that one method, but they're in year 3 of it. But the volume's not there. It was 17 deals, right? So it's like massive profits, but 17 deals. He's like, how do we get more of these? Go, well, keep doing what you're doing the offline, because that's where your volume comes from, but your high margins in general come from the inbound. And we'll see if we can't find some more there. But the reason I brought this up is I said, man, I haven't talked to Craig in a few years, and Craig was always the guy on the calls when they first started working with Carrot 4 or 5 years ago. And he goes, dude, Craig has kind of like done that whole, he exited his business, basically not sold it, but he exited the day-to-day. He worked with Gary Harper, who I know is Sharper Solutions there. I met him the first time at Investor Fuel as well. And Craig has done that. So he built a successful business, a machine that would serve sellers and buyers well. He's an agent and an investor. He built a team, and he would just go, okay, let me master this thing myself. Now let me create a process and let me put someone into it. Now you give someone a good paying job, and now you get to go back and do more of kind of what gives you energy, and you just keep on building that team. It could be a team of 1 for your business. For him, it's a team of like a couple dozen, because he built a really big business. But now he's living in Florida. And I don't know what he's doing, but it doesn't sound like he's really plugged into the business almost at all, except for probably a monthly or every other week.
That's my understanding too. Yeah.
And it's so cool because this is where I think it's important to surround yourself with other people, with people that have done what you want to do. He wanted to build a business and then find a way to exit the day-to-day so he could have that freedom in his business. And he got around the right people in Investor Fuel to do that. Gary and others likely who have guided them. The only way he could do that is by getting enough leads to come in to supply that income to pay for his income and his teams, which comes from Investor Machine and Carrot, right? It's like, so guys, get around the right people. Mike, with Investor Fuel right now, I know you guys have an amazing user base. I was at the last one in Nashville. I'm going to be at the next one in Nashville this year as well. What are some of the big topics right now that people are talking about? What are people worried about? What are they excited about?
Yeah, we've kind of come of age in line with some of what we talked about here today. Is people are running their business more like a real business than they
Yep.
used to in the past. It used to just be a little more cowboy-ish, if that's a word, where
Hmm.
people are just figuring it out and hustling hard. And a lot of stuff that we talk about is how to build a business that can give you your life back and give you some of those
Mm.
freedoms that you want.
Yep.
And so that's a lot of conversation. In fact, next week we've got 20 some people from Investorfield going on a trip to Vegas where we're going to like
Mm.
shoot sniper rifles in the desert and
Cool.
drink champagnes in a speedboat. I don't know if that should be allowed, but we're doing it. And we go to Cabo. We do all these things and like celebrate the good life, right? But the only thing that can give you that good life ultimately is building your business in a way to where the business can kind of fund and fuel your life,
Mm.
right? Instead of you having to work to support yourself or to support the business, the other way
Yep.
around. But those are all the talks right now. Obviously, lead
Mm.
generation is always top of mind and always has been. Like, how can I generate more and better, higher quality leads? Um, Financing isn't talked about nearly as much because getting financing is easier than it ever has been in my
Yeah.
time in the real estate industry. But it'll come back around to where that's hard again and more expensive,
Mhm.
and you have to kind of find who the best lender is. Over the past few years, all the national lenders have really beat each other up over price, and consumers have won during that process.
Yeah.
But I'd say it's all around teams, putting the right people in place in their business so that the business can run less with them, and putting the right
Mhm.
systems and structures in place that Sharper helps with, for example.
Yep.
And just kind of coming to terms with outsourcing the stuff that they could never be as proficient at as Carrot or Investor Machine. Like, just coming to terms with, I just need to pay for better, higher quality white glove type support and not
Mm.
try to say, well, I can just create a Wix site and start doing my own stuff. It's like to save $50 a month or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
why would you do that? And so I think there's a lot of that stuff going on. As people is just like working with the best, willing to buy because they know it's going to be a great investment for them ultimately and give them their life back.
Dude, so here's kind of where I want to bring this to an end as we kind of look at where we are right now in the real estate industry as a whole, right? The real estate market as a whole, uh, for agents, for investors. So we've really had this run up of the market. I mean, pretty much since 2012, let's say, right around there.
Yeah.
2012 was kind of like the bottom in many of the spots. That's when we bought some of our best deals. In hindsight, I thought I was paying too much for them in 2012, and we're looking at it going, oh my gosh, that was like the best time to buy ever. And so since, let's say, 2015, especially, that's when you've seen a lot of people enter the market as an agent or an investor. And I always talk about something called the 3 to 5 year turn and burn cycle, where we get really excited about starting a business. And what we have to learn at first is generating leads. And then we got to learn how to negotiate. And then we got to learn, like, how do you close the deal? And then you got to learn how do we get more of those? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm making good money, but I'm so wore out, and I'm just like not enjoying my life as much as I thought I would if I was earning $50,000 a month. And then it gets into teams, right? Let's say year 2, year 3, you start to get into teams. Then around year 4, year 5, you start to think about, oh my gosh, this is a great business, but I have other passions that I'd love for this business to fuel. And that's where like really buying back that time freedom, building a business that can work for you versus you working for us is really important. And that's where I see those conversations happening in the big masterminds like Investor Fuel, is because you had so many new people enter the market 2015 through now. They're at that spot, where they have to be building a team, where if they want that freedom, where you really are starting to then look at, okay, I figured out how to make some money. Now, how do I keep the money and have it grow, but also win back my time? And so
Yep.
it's cool to hear that those are the topics being talked about, and people are winning back their freedom, guys. So you can go out there and make an impact as well, which is cool. So Mike, we're going to have you on the Carrot Summit. So guys, this is it's probably not the first initial announcement, but it's one of them. If you guys have not heard yet, we're bringing the Carrot Summit back. And we've done it for 2 or 3 years now. And each time that we've ran it, we've had thousands of people sign up for the Carrot Summit, thousands who have attended over the course of the days. And we're going to run it bigger and better than we ever have. We're literally doing 24 hours of content over 2 days. And
wow.
hopefully I'll be alive after that. But we're having some of the biggest names. The biggest one of all is Mike Hambright's going to be on the summit.
Whatever.
Biggest one of all. And we're going to dive deeper into some of these subjects and just really dive really deep on what the biggest investors and hybrid agent investors are talking about right now. We're going to dive deep there. But we've got Tom Ferry, the biggest real estate coach in the industry. He's going to be closing out day 2. And then we've got Pace Morby, who is A&E's triple digit flip and good friend of mine, fly fished out here by my house in May of last year or September of last year. And just amazing dude. He's going to close out day 1, but we have Tim Bratz on coming on for commercial. We've got, oh my gosh. I believe Gary Harper's coming on, or I'm not sure if we've locked him down. Amazing guests throughout the entire the entire 2 days, guys. So go to carrotsummit.com. That's carrotsummit.com. Sign up. It's completely free to watch it live. So if you guys want to show up, it's at the end of March 30th and 31st this year, 2022. 2 full days live streaming of the biggest players in all of real estate across investment, agent, and hybrid. We're gonna help drive your guys' business forward this year, inspire you, equip you with the right things, and help you to win out in your market. And I'm excited to have you back, Mike. So we're gonna have a chance to catch up then again and dive deeper. But guys, go sign up, carrotsummit.com, share it up with people. You can buy the recordings of the event before the event happens for a 50% discount. So if you're like, man, I just can't make it to all the sessions, which you probably won't be able to, and you definitely can't make it to all the breakout sessions, because we're gonna have breakout sessions, 2 of them at once. And if you show up to one, you can't see the other one. We're going to have breakout sessions on marketing. My assistant, Jen, is going to come on, my assistant of 10 years. She's going to teach how her and I work together in detail. If you guys want to have an EA or already have one and have it work better together, we're going to give you our documents, our EA playbook, the whole thing. Guys, carrotsummit.com. Only $100 to buy the recordings right after you sign up at a pre-event price. After that, they'll be $199, which is still a bargain. So check it out, guys. carrotsummit.com, March 30th and 31st. And you guys will see Mr. Hambright there as well.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Mike, dude, I appreciate you big time, man. And as always, just coming on and, giving an update, but just being a great partner for us here at Carrot. We have so many Carrot customers at Investor Fuel, so many shared clients. And I'm always excited about what we're able to do together and how you're impacting the industry, man.
Me too, buddy.
Big time. Well, guys, subscribe on YouTube if you want to get updates to these episodes as they come out. And also on the podcast, whatever podcast tool you're listening to, you're using, hit the subscribe button. If you're on Apple Podcasts, go give a rating and review. The last time I looked, we're well into the hundreds. I think it's 300 or 400 5-star reviews now. And I'd love to get it up over the 5. Let's march towards 1,000. What that means for you guys is you guys get to be a part of the movement to help build more positivity, be that beacon of positivity and possibility into the market more. The better ratings attract more people to our ecosystem so we can hopefully change their lives as well and help them build a business of freedom and impact, just like Mr. Hambright is and just like we're doing here at Carrot. So thank you guys. Have an amazing rest of the week. Mike, thank you, man.
See ya.